All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Darcy Gavignani
and joining us today for our weekly discussion on Ascended World. So where do we start? We've just come off a long, what we call a deep dive weekend. And we did a lot of deep diving. So
we did.
But the day of light happens, the light of day happens at the end, so we're all good. But this was a great topic that came up, and it was from before we even started the weekend. And it's so let's sort of give an introduction to that. And I'll talk about, I had a client where we were doing a session together, and I saw him in the energy that he was really, really the most comfortable with, and felt like was his strength, felt like was his power. And when we were in the session, the guidance was for him to walk, there was a doorway, and he had to walk through the doorway and shed all of that energy.
Well, and he'd already expended a lot of, quote, healing to embrace that energy.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Years.
He was vested.
Yes.
He was really vested in that.
And loved it and felt like it was empowering. Yes. So in the session, it was like, okay, we've got to go, through the door. And he was like, what? I'm like, nope.
Right.
And I was like, but yeah, I mean, that's why the door is here, for us to walk through. But to do that, you have to shed all of that energy and leave it behind. And so we did that. And as he did it, it was like he became just, that energy entity. And then he became himself. And he expanded out to be some incredible being that was like so much bigger. And that power that he thought was so much of himself before condensed down into this tiny little like marble and incorporated into the bigger him.
Almost like a facet.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was a great laying the ground as we came into this past weekend.
Little did we know at the time.
So Sandra, that's all she said. Good morning. Oh, I didn't get that on mine. Well, you're just that still. So you're getting a lot of things on. Good, but I'm like, all right, you do the comments today then. So in our weekend, we have covered a lot that we could do at least a month's worth of these on. But the topic that really was really important was this whole, like, what is something that you believe is a strength of yours that you really identify with, that you feel like is like your value in the world?
And you have a lot invested in it.
Yes.
You've either through education or through, blood, sweat, and tears or anything like that.
Sacrifice.
Right, sacrifice. That, right. Oh, yeah, that was prevalent.
Right. And so what is it, those things that or roles that we have identified with, right, as our value in the world, to that we have put so much of our energy to, so much of our focus on, and we think is a strength of ours, think is our purpose, think all that kind of stuff.
It's a spirituality.
Yes.
Right. It's just like this dragon.
The way that we're practicing it or whatever, when it's actually a limitation because you let it be your focus.
And you externalize it.
Yes.
You even if it is a part of you, you still reference it externally. And that just like motherhood.
Yeah, and that was one of the examples, like motherhood, how much we invest and put our focus in it, and then things change and we realize, oh my gosh, that's it. Like, what do I have now?
Right.
Well, or even like beyond that is like even getting to that place of like, culturally, people are told, oh, well, when you're a parent, you're supposed to be a parent. Like there's so much like peer pressure to say, oh, like your value is being a mother or a father in this way. And I've seen it in both ways with men and women, with many clients that I've worked with.
Michael says he's getting a lot of microphone feedback. I don't know if the volume's up loud or if their volume. No, my volume's off.
Oh, yeah, sorry. We had to use the computer.
Right. We're doing the best we can.
We're doing the best we can today. We're trying to be loud enough for you to hear us without being too crazy. But anyway, so Yeah, so the thing is, like, you see, so when people grow up, or girls grow up, or boys grow up, or whatever, and think, this is what I'm supposed to do. Like, okay, I can do this and have fun and enjoy myself until I become a mother or father, and then I have to be this figure. I have to sacrifice my wants and needs for the children, and we have a big cultural thing on that. And in that whole time, you're ignoring yourself.
Like I'm thinking about it right now, and it's like a lot of TV shows growing up and even commercials, how it's portrayed, and it's like sending that message of how to have a perfect household and how invested you got to be and how you leave everything else to be there and always respond to someone else's needs.
Right.
Well, and it used to be, I don't know how long ago, but you know, the parents would give the daughter away. It's like, now this is your possession and your responsibility, and you figure it out. And you know,
Well, some people still do that.
that's true. That's true. That's true.
But anyway, so the thing is that, and I've seen that, like, and you can say the same thing for careers, right?
Right.
You know, like, okay, so say you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, and this is what, and it doesn't mean that you can't love it again, but then it's like, okay, but this is how it, if you love it because it's how it values you, right? Or how you value yourself because of it, to say, well, look at me, I'm a doctor, like, and then you have everything that says doctor this, and I'm a doc, and you know, you have it on your license plate and whatever, and there's no judgment about that. But what happens is your ego gets so entwined with that, and you get so focused on, I have to put all my energy to this, that you don't realize it's a small, tiny piece of the whole of who you are. And that's what we were looking at this weekend, was a lot of stuff around like where we had lost our focus on the bigger picture because we were so focused on like certain things. And sometimes it's because we have these unworthiness things that come up, right? So then therefore I have to prove myself to be valuable this way, so I put all my energy to that so other people will believe me that way. And that's all based on cultural expectations and others' expectations. And
well, and a lot of times the ego fools you and say, like for instance, the dragon energy, or anytime you feel you've achieved something spiritually, you get to that place where it's like, I put, you know, all this energy into this. I'm not turning my back on this. I'm not walking away. I'm not setting this down because I worked hard for this and I evolved to this. So how can this be bad?
right.
And then you start getting into the feeling that just because you have to leave something behind means it's bad.
And even, for example, with careers, your income and how that brings value. And then if you want to leave that, and it's like you're leaving what gives a lot of value in our society.
Yeah, and when you have people who, like you're a very successful lawyer for years and years, and you feel hollow and dead inside, and so you go, I'm not going to do that anymore. And your family's like, oh, but I like when you do this. I like when you earn that kind
What do you
of money.
mean you're not going to do this? Well, see, and that's what happened to me.
The family's so much happier when you do
Right.
that.
It was like me when I was in corporate, right? When I was in corporate, I had this successful career, I had this awesome, you know, income and a great, you know, position and all that kind of stuff. And one day I got the voice to go. Before I even recognized that that's what it was, it said, yeah, not happy. This isn't you. After 17 years of investing myself in this career and, you know, getting to you know, global director levels and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not happy. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. Right. And so I just left. I started my own business. That's when I started my own business. And that like what sort of led me to here today. And I think back and I think, wow, like I didn't even think like that was, I was thinking, wow, if I really thought about it, that would have been sort of scary because at the time I cut my household income in by 2/3. Yeah. And then it was like, oh, and I just did it. My kids were like in middle school, whatever. And I remember my family going, what are you doing? You're too young to be having a midlife crisis. And I was like,
yeah, because a lot of times that's what we like.
Midlife. That's why I called it my early midlife crisis. And I'm like, but the crisis was, I wasn't happy. Right. And I was like, yeah, I got the paycheck and the position. I had the little life that I thought I wanted. And that's what's happening to a lot of people now. who come into themselves and say,
Right. Michael says some people get stuck in these endless loops. For example, alumni organizations for students just evolving the same loop, right?
Yeah.
Like, can't get over, you graduated, but yet you have this new organization that now you can be a
right, that keeps you in college.
part of. Right.
Yeah. And so it's like this, and you're right. And the biggest thing that for us to watch is like, how much are we investing in making sure that's a part of our identity, no matter what.
Right. And
It grows to become our identity.
Right.
and it gets back to that basic of, are you living being led by your joy and love, or are you living being led by the ego saying, this makes me feel important, this satisfies me.
Right. Or yeah. And it's like, okay, so if we put too much focus on one thing, right? So, and then we get to like you're talking about like the family. But the other part is, oh, well, I've been doing this for so long and I'm making this much money. And if I change directions now, then I'm just not going to make that kind of money and I'm not going to be able to live.
And I'm obligated to
Stay on this
continuing
way.
to support these people in the manner they've become accustomed to.
Yeah. Or myself even. I mean, I know plenty of people who are single, have no family, and they support themselves and they've had a career that they've had, and it's like, well, they're not happy. And I go, well, so change. And they're like, but then I won't be able to pay my bills. I'm like, but that's an assumption that you're creating, right? By saying that.
Right. Exactly.
When we allow ourselves, like, so it's sort of like when we have the discussions about spirituality. Spirituality is not a box, and it's not a box in your reality. It's all of what you are, and the better we assimilate all of it, the more we flow from one thing to another, even if it doesn't make any sense, and we stay less attached.
Right. And we make the assumption that once we've achieved something like, for instance, spirituality, and we get to a certain level and we're comfortable with, and we've worked towards that okay, this is good, and I'm going to stay here. And it's like, but what if that is like the tiny little molecule, and if you allow it to be your whole world, you'll never have all those other molecules out there. You'll never have, and we use the quilt example.
Right.
If I allow this one quilt square to be my everything, I'm missing the whole rest of it. And the growth that comes with that, and the joy and the love and the bliss.
And sometimes we don't give the allowance to ourselves to explore that we don't have to be only one thing or do only one thing. We can do more in different aspects.
Right.
Yeah. And so, the challenge with that is that we're often blind to it because we have so much energy invested, right? And it's always like, well, listen to your butts, because the butts are always the ego, right? The butts are going, well, I would love to do this, but and the reasoning as to why, because I have to focus myself here. And like what we got into a big conversation about last night, which I was like, oh, we got to stop talking because we're going to talk about this tomorrow, right? Which is, when you go back to the parenting thing, right? The parenting role being so big, and it's like, oh, well, I just want my kids to this, and it's like, well, but then we shift to a place of being the example, right, of self-nourishment, of self-love, of having so much love for myself that I actually spill over and find it easy for others and encourage others to do the same, right? And if you have your kids grow up with that, then they grow up learning to do that for themselves.
Right.
And that's so much easier, because then it's not like going, I have to sacrifice myself for this or whatever.
Yeah, Michael sums it up by saying infinite beings with finite time and choices.
Yeah.
Which is what we would, by just staying there, that's what we would limit that infinite.
Right. Like Sarah was looking at, like she was talking about the thing. She's like, oh, but I'm looking at this tapestry and it's beautiful. And look at what I've woven, like thread by thread. And I said, but what if it's just a little patch on the big quilt?
Yeah.
Then you never get the quilt done.
Right.
Or you have to come back 3 million lifetimes because it takes out more than kick yourself in the butt.
Row done.
So it's up to us. And so that, and again, the biggest part then is if you go into spirituality, because you're right. I always tell people that any practice that they do is great as long as it expands them, and that it's time to move beyond it when it starts to limit them. And limiting them is not what they think it is, because you get into that,
Right.
to that mindset of, oh no, like you said, this is what, this is how I got here, I'm honoring this and whatever. But then it's like, okay, but if you feel like that you can't do any, like you have to connect in through a certain ritual or a ceremony or a tool, and then or whatever, or you have to do it with a certain incantation or whatever, then it's important to look at, well, why am I giving my power away? Because you are giving your power away, because we're the ones who give the power to those tools that we use. So at some point, part of the reason for the tools is to be an assistant, not a crutch, right? As I always talk about. And it's like, so at some point you got to say, all right, well, am I still expanding? Am I still evolving? Or have I been in the same place, like a plateau, for any period of time? And if I'm on the plateau, then maybe I need to look at what I believe are my strengths in this field to say, how do I shift that?
Well, and you've got so many message boards, whether it's your body or whether it's your car.
And other circumstances happen, and you're like, okay, what's going on? Maybe you're getting the message that it's time to shift or change something.
Yeah, it's all the hidden messages.
I love that when Yasmin texts us, hey guys, what's going on?
For example, in motherhood, I mean, kids grow and evolve, and then they fly away, and that's one of the changes that we know it's going to happen. We just don't know exactly when, and us being prepared for it too.
Yeah. So the whole key, and here's the other thing: the ego will fight you every step of the way, because the ego will say, no, 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 this is who we are.
Right.
This is who we are.
This is what we agreed upon. You're not holding up your end of the bargain.
Right. And it's like, like this is who we are. And if you try to go out here, that's gonna harm this box.
Right.
Or it might go away. And if it harms this box or goes away, then who am I?
Right.
Like, what value do I have? Instead of thinking, well, this is a little piece of my value, but look at all of this that expresses the divine being that I am, that I'm ignoring.
Right.
Because I'm putting all my energy here because I don't believe that I'm all of this, which is usually part of the case, right? So when you get stuck in, we go back to the spiritual stuff, you get stuck in the thing, it's like, oh, well, this practice gave me power. This practice. And if I don't use it, then I'm useless. Then I can't, I can't tap into it. And it's like, well, then there's some inner work to be done.
This is all external, and the reality is valuing ourselves for who we are.
And it's amazing once you start looking at it that way, and those things start really picking at you, and you get to the point where it's like, okay, I can't live with this anymore. You feel closed in, even though prior to this awareness, you were, oh no, I'm in a good place.
Yeah.
I'm in a good place. And once you get a glimpse of it, it's like you can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah.
And that's when you've gotta.
And then because then if you don't follow that, that's when you get the very loud messages and your body starts to react, right?
Yes.
So let's give you some ideas of that. Migraines, autoimmune diseases, allergies.
I mean, simple stuff like can't sleep.
Yeah.
Can't sleep, or stomach upsets and
Injuries.
oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Foot, leg, and hip injuries.
Or anything transportation related,
Right.
anything moving.
Right. Like Sarah said, the car before, right? You got a flat tire, you got a problem getting the car to go. Well, think about that. Just saying. Right. I mean, we spent this weekend shedding a lot.
Right.
A lot. I can't even tell you, because we did it in such a really efficient manner that didn't feel great for a little while. But it was eons of stuff.
Yeah. And very stretching and very, I don't know. It at the end it was like, oh, I see the freedom now. In the middle it was kind of like,
No,
I don't get it.
Yeah, it was, no. But I love it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that.
I don't know how to forgive that. I don't know how to let go of that.
Yes.
Oh, and see, and we're not used to being so conscious of that within ourselves. And so we hide behind it. And that's what makes us sick. That's what causes stuff to collapse around us. Like, okay, guess what? Miserable in your job. And you know that your expanded self is telling you to go elsewhere, to do something else, to follow a different strain on your heart and all that kind of stuff. And you go, no, I gotta stay here, Guess what happens? You get laid off, the company goes under, or you get fired or something like that. I mean, or you get demoted, or like things that will push you to a point where you have no choice, or you'll get into, say, like you'll have some kind of a heart attack or something that'll take you out of work and take you and stop you short. Right. Look at how wonderful COVID has been for that for many.
Right. Absolutely.
So, it's a matter of reassessing and taking this opportunity to reassess is so vital for us collectively to go to the collective level that we're talking about here.
Well, and also, I mean, if we spent the time in connection with ourselves, we would start to see the cumulative effects we're having on ourselves.
Mhm.
Whereas if we're always at that, blinded level of just, pushing through the day, pushing through, we start to miss. I mean, when we go and we do these weekends and I look at parts of my body and go, how could I have done that to myself? And I was blind to it.
Mm-hmm.
I felt discomfort, yes, and it was like, well, I'll change this or I'll change this.
Or it's got to be this intake or what I'm eating or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, I just need a different vitamin. Or I need to do a flush, or I need to do a detox or whatever. But had I paid attention all along, I could have sensed that developing. And I think that, if we know what's going on, it brings a whole different level of urgency to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Including the beliefs.
Yeah.
Oh, and Michael asked, how about the reverse when the universe doesn't want you to move?
Well, the question is always to ask, is it truly the universe that doesn't want you to move, or are you self-sabotaging? Or are you holding the energy of self? And that's what I tell people, because there are fine lines in there, right?
Really?
Because we do fool ourselves, and the ego gets very smart the more conscious that we become. The ego becomes smarter too and goes, so I'm going to wrap this around here, right? It makes these lines really fine. And so,
well, like our last deep dive weekend, and I'm going to use you as an example. You set how many alarms?
3.
to catch the flight. Yeah.
Right. None of them went off. And she could have said, okay, I just wasn't meant to go. My guidance is I'm not to go. But what it was is she caught the next flight. Her luggage got there and she got in earlier than she would have on the other flight. And it was perfect.
Right.
So the message was, you just need a different flight.
And in that moment,
You picked the wrong flight.
The moment was like, do I give up? And I say, oh, this was not meant to be. And something was like, no, this is for you to take action and do things differently.
Yeah. And sometimes it is egoic resistance, right? So sometimes the ego goes, oh, look, we're not supposed to do that because we got this resistance here. But instead of checking in and saying, is this, so here's the key, check in the guidance, as we always say. Is this for me to do, or is this for me to go, or is this for me to try, or is this the direction for me to take? Not should I, because should asks the ego. Right. When you say should, or like you're like, do I have to, or whatever. If you hear that, the ego goes, oh, thanks for asking. Let me give you the answer that I believe, right? And then you think that's guidance, right? Right. But if you say, okay, is it for me to do this? And then the other question to ask is, or am I having resistance to this for me to resolve?
I always think about, is it fear? If there's some sense of fear, then it feels more, it's more ego.
Right. Right. And if you get a sense of urgency, like, don't ever do that, or you have to do this,
that's ego.
Yeah, I had taught someone to use the pendulum for vitamins. And she was always coming out, she's like, I never get that I should take any of these vitamins. And I said, well, what are you asking? And she was asking, do I need this?
Oh, right,
Not, is this for me right now?
right.
And so she was, no, you have everything.
Yeah.
You have access to that vibration. You just need to go get it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's the other thing that when we use external tools like that, even when we use in words, right? And then we say, should I do this? Do I need this? Right? Because you don't need anything ever, because you have everything as the divine, right? It's like, no, you don't need anything. So you, like you're saying with this person. So that's the really important thing, is to be very aware of what you're asking. Be very, very aware of how you're asking it and the answer you're getting, because like you're saying, oh, you've got to do this in your mind.
Right.
I've had people say, oh no, my guidance said that I have to do this. And it's like, no, that wasn't guidance. But, you know, it was a great conversation that I had not too long ago about that with a client on the fine tuning of guidance. And that's another little step in there. And this is important because when we're talking about these boxes that we believe are our value, and we're getting this pull from the expanded self to go in a different direction, and then the ego starts throwing up blockages to change direction, right?
Right.
You know, the thing was that there's this little fine line that's really important on guidance, which is guidance is a very, very direct, simple answer. Unemotional. It just says, do this, try this, consider this, right? Ding, 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 ding. What happens a lot, and I was so excited about this client, like bringing this up to me. I was like, yay, is that the realization of getting the guidance in that says, do this. And then the ego goes, oh, well, that means that this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And now let's just wrap all these expectations about this is going to happen because I was guided to do this. And then when it doesn't happen, you say, well, I just wasn't listening to guidance right because it didn't happen. It's like, well, did guidance say that was going to happen, or did guidance say that for you to do something?
Right.
Because there's two different answers to that, you know? And so that's a really big discernment. That's really important. And so on the other end, Michael, the question about the doing, like, what if the universe is preventing you from doing it? And so say you really are tuned in and you ask, is this for me to do? Or what is there for me to do? Or is this, you know, is this the direction for me to take right now? Right? Because right now could be no. Tomorrow it could be yes. Or yesterday could have been yes, and today might be no. And so that since our expanded self sees the whole game board, right, and says, oh, this is the best, you know, this is the path that we're going to choose for like all this stuff to get completed. So, and where this is only these little things that get completed. So let's go this way. And maybe you take this turn here and it doesn't look like you're going this way, but just be patient. Right?
Well, and you know, I look at it as like you're guided to read a book, and you read a book and it's like, that's good. And you never get back to it, and you never get back to it. And you feel like, oh, but I was guided to read this book. Maybe it was just the one chapter.
Right. Or one paragraph.
Right. Exactly.
I've been guided to pick up a book. Like, I've been guided to read a book, and I'll look at it, like exactly what you're saying. I'll look at it and nothing really pulls me, right? And then I literally will pick it up one day and like it'll open to a page and I will find exactly the thing I needed to read. And then I'm like, okay, well, got it, done with that one.
Exactly.
And that can be the case too. So like,
well, and that can be people too. I don't, you know, you need to have a chance encounter with this one person, and that's it. And it's not meant to be a lifelong friendship or whatever. It's that I'm here for this and we're done. And that's perfect.
It is perfect.
And there's no judgment. There's no.
Sometimes we challenge it's a challenge because, for example, some of us are like, if I start something, I want to be able to finish it. And sometimes guidance is, you know, it's just for this amount of time or for this purpose, and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the ego. requiring you to
With
finish it.
expectations of
Saying
saying that you're only valuable if you finish it, right?
I'm accountable, I'm a good girl, I'm reliable, I'm all these things.
Yeah, there's a lot of that too. So there's so many twists and turns. And so there's so many ways that we have gotten to be masters on how to keep ourselves in a box, because we believe it, we convince ourselves that it is all we are. We're not all of one of anything. We're everything. And so it's like, okay, you know, and how many times I see, especially right now, this past year has been expanded consciousness says, hey, done with that.
Right.
No. I'm going to do this. I'm going to continue down this path. Done with that.
I like this, it's easy.
Yeah. It's easy. It's comfortable. Right. Yeah. Done with that. And then the harder you try, then other things take you out. Look at what we did collectively with the COVID and all these other things.
We were pretty comfortable.
Yeah. I mean,
Now we're not.
yeah. Yep. And it's going to continue. My understanding is it's going to continue to get bigger and bigger.
Right.
And not necessarily COVID. I'm talking about other things or whatever are going to continue to do that, because collectively it's time for us to let go of our collective ego and the collective boxes that we have created of these cultural and global expectations of what, you know, what life is supposed to look like.
Right.
Who's supposed to be in power? Who's supposed to be doing this? Who's supposed to be, you know, how things are supposed to balance and things like that. Mm-hmm. So lots to be aware of. But really, the thing is, these this weekend, I will say, and the three of us are constantly having this conversation. We are constantly aware of what's going on, and we still had a very, very challenging, exhaustive weekend. That we feel great today because we topped it off with a nice little like whipped cream and a cherry last night with a great session that sort of smoothed it all out. But man, there were tears. There was physical denial.
I don't see anything. I'm not seeing anything.
And sadness of letting go of those things that we feel like are who we are.
That not necessarily were negative but it was something to let go of.
Well, it's like, that's complete. You completed that.
Yeah.
You completed that. Why sit and look at it again and again and like and recreate it again and again? Doesn't that get, you know, it's almost like the expanded self goes, yeah, that's getting boring. Let's move on. Right now.
Are we done yet?
But yeah, and so like what, there was like the part when you guys were working on me, and it was like all the stuff I was shedding off my back. Like so many layers of stuff that I didn't even recognize until we had gone through all these steps of letting go these other things that I resisted. It's like, no, I love this. Well, don't take it away from me.
To go to sit and look at it and have appreciation for it, and then just want to get stuck there in the appreciation of
I love it.
It's beautiful.
Right. Yeah, so it was like all these steps, and then just like it was just like so deep to say, even if I don't have conscious recollection of what those things represented, but the emotion behind them was, oh, I love this. Oh, look at how beautiful this was.
And that's where you shift that in,
yes,
in that cycle of apology.
Yeah. Yeah. Forgiveness, acceptance, embracing, love, you know, gratitude, to say, look at the tapestry that I did create. Look at this beautiful piece. And now I can make all these other beautiful pieces.
But only if I allow this one to take its place,
Right.
which is not consuming me.
Right. And yeah. And because the consuming you is somehow giving you value. When it consumes you, it somehow gives me purpose. When you say that, that's an ego thing that says it gives me purpose, because somehow you're valued. And that includes in the spiritual world, because people say that all the time.
It does. It does. And I think that that's the biggest catch right now. Once you get over the hurdle of saying, okay, now I acknowledge that the world of energy really does exist, and then you get caught in that.
Well, then you caught it, creating new separation or hierarchies or whatever, oh, that was this, but this is this.
And it's, you know, it's still the pig. It's just got the lipstick on it.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, that's the, yeah, because when we say something like, oh, you know, that's my value, or that's my, and here's the other thing, that's my purpose is another catchphrase that hides behind the ego. Because the ego says, because only when I achieve my purpose is when I get valued in the big, even in the bigger picture, like, oh, the angels will applaud me and blah, blah, blah. Well, I am the angel. So, you know, and it's like, well, we still don't realize how we get driven by the ego. And it's like, well, check in to say, am I nourishing myself? Am I living from the heart?
Am I in my authenticity?
Because that's truly, as we understand it, your expanded purpose is to remember that true authenticity in this moment and in the next moment, and to keep it expanding, you know, until we remember that oneness, the wholeness that we all are. And so that's the expansion that we do that we sometimes forget about.
I feel like we're getting back to the I don't exist conversation, LOL.
Yep.
Not individually, we don't.
I don't exist. Well, we said that, didn't we say that last night? We were talking about that. I'm like, oh, well, remember that doesn't exist anyway, because we don't even exist. So, you know. But yeah, we are getting back to that, because it's not that we don't have a purpose. We all have, when we embody as ourselves, because we're all the divine consciousness embodying itself in these different facets. So that's how we're all the same. Loved how what she came out of her thing the other night, and she looks at me and she goes, hi, me. Right. And I was like, what? It was the most adorable thing. And I was like, and I was pretty,
I'm like, what?
yeah, it's like she finally saw it. And then she looks at Sarah and goes, hi, me. And I was like, oh, because I know somebody named Jaime. So I was like, why are you saying that name? That was weird. Not even somebody I really know very well. I'm like, what? But I was like, oh, yeah, you see it. And I could see the recognition, because when you finally see it, then it's like, oh, well, yeah, of course we have a purpose. We're all notes in a symphony, right? We all have this interaction that makes this beautiful collage of the symphony that is the multiverse. We've created it in duality. And that's really, though, to really be our full note. And our heart knows our full note, not the mind.
And that's the purpose, is to get to that full note so that then the creation really can happen.
Exactly, because that's when the magic really happens.
It really does.
And when we live from the heart, it's like never work.
Oh, wrong.
Even your
No effort.
No effort. You are happy and enjoy. And then that vibration, if you look at the scale of vibrations, that's the vibration of the divine, right? Love. And the higher we go, the more we spread it, the more that we spread it just by being there. So you don't have to do one dang thing. So it's really funny, because we're like, well, what do I have to do? Da, da, da. I want to really be, you know, important, and I want to be, you know, serve my purpose. And I'm like, be happy. You know, find your love, find what, you know, makes you tick.
Well, and that's where you get to, you know, your cup runneth over.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what that is.
Well, then just sitting in somebody's space helps them raise their vibration, because at some level they go, oh, I can do this.
So it's not what we do, it's who we are.
Again, it's being the example, like we're talking about with the mother, right? Being the example.
Yeah, I just saw therapy horses where they put someone with severe involuntary movement, cerebral palsy, and they surrounded them with the horses that laid down and lowered their heart rate and their breathing, and the shaking stopped.
So are we all, but I mean, it's not a word.
Right.
They understood. Yes.
Right, exactly.
By being.
I mean, but that's part of what I think animals remind us of, because so many times animals pick up energy far faster than most humans do. Right. And so watching animals like can give you an indicator of the energy that you're emitting, and also what those around you are emitting, or just what's going on like in the general area. And if sometimes they will alert you to things that you might not be aware of.
You know, service dogs can smell when your blood sugar is high or low and warn you, or animals automatically leave the shoreline because they sense us phenomena.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
mean, they're that.
Or like right before tornadoes come, like the birds go silent, like everything sort of disappears, you know, everything gets really quiet. I know, it's like the hair in the back of my neck stands up because all of a sudden I'll be like, there is no sound.
Need to take chill.
Yes, you should probably just be a little aware of what's going on here. So these are a lot of, this is a lot. It's, I will say that it is uncomfortable, like we were saying. It's uncomfortable, but then it's so liberating when we let it go.
And it's so uncomfortable just because we're not in the habit of living this way.
Oh, we're not, especially if we've lived any period of our lives thinking we have to be this kind of person. We have to do this to be valuable. We have to do this to be loved because, and that should be enough.
Right, right.
You know, and then the expanded self goes
No.
a lot more. And, you know, when you're an empty shell, then you're not serving any purpose to anything. You're
Right.
just perpetuating an illusion that denies that.
And then can't serve for long.
Yeah.
Won't serve for long. Right.
So what do we do?
All up in our butts.
Our butts. That's our butts for today. So our session, we're gonna focus on allowing ourselves to see those things within us that we put so much value to, and see them in a much more integrated, fuller picture, allowing ourselves to expand beyond that to really be, you know, what we are here to be. That feels really good. Okay.
Let's do it.
Great. That was a lot of unraveling.
Right.
Funny, as I saw the page of a book, and then I saw, you know, like it's like, because you know, it's like, oh, you get lost in the paragraph. You get lost in writing this chapter. Right. You get lost in writing this page, and then it zoomed out, and then it's like, here's the book, right? And it's like, oh, there's the book, and then it was like everybody's books started like, you know, being complete, right? And then I saw the big like infinity symbol, and then the infinity symbol went like holographic and like was like multi-dimensional. I was like, yeah, this.
Right.
And then after that, I don't remember. I just sort of floated out there.
Yeah, great. Okay. Very expensive. Oh, right.
Try not to fall off the stool. Yeah, mine was like like weaving a rug. Like if you get so focused on one little piece, and it was like just the expansion and the joy associated with that moving outward.
I felt more like being that empty vessel. Like I felt like if I stayed long enough, I'll start floating.
No, that would be great live streaming. All three of us. No visual effects were used. Nice. Yeah. So yeah, so sit with that this week and look in your life what it is that you may be focusing so much on that you're missing other parts of you. Like, and think of things that you believe are your strengths, and then say, well, would I feel like I wasn't valuable, or if I wasn't being able to do something if I didn't do this? And if that's the case, then that's something to start rechecking with the ego and you know, sort of fine tuning and letting go and whatever. And if you want to try a deep dive weekend with us, we are going to start giving them to small, intimate groups. And the first one's going to be in the Dallas area, probably in June. Yep. I'm planning that this weekend too. So more info to come on that. And then Sarah and I have another set of programs coming out online. So, yes. So anyway, lots of stuff. We're here to
Flowing.
We're here to play with all of this with you. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. This is Angela Coulter and
Darcy Gavignoni.
and see you next time. Thanks.
Bye-bye.